Hello and welcome back to another episode of The Longing. Today we will be continuing to read The Sleeper Awakes by H.G. Wells. So let's get going. Graham, like most of the people of his former time, distrusted the hypnotist, or he might then and there have eased his mind of many painful preoccupations. But in spite of Lincoln's assurances, he held to the old theory that to be hypnotized was in some way the surrender of his personality, the abdication of his will. At the banquet of wonderful experiences that was beginning, he wanted very keenly to remain absolutely himself. The next day, and another day, and yet another day passed in such interests as these. Each day Graham spent many hours in the glorious entertainment of flying. On the third he soared across middle France, and within sight of the snow-clad Alps. These vigorous exercises gave him restful sleep. He recovered almost wholly from the spiritless anemia of his first awakening. And whenever he was not in the air, and awake, Lincoln was assiduous in the cause of his amusement. All that was novel and curious in contemporary invention was brought to him, until at last his appetite for novelty was well nigh glutted. One might fill a dozen inconsecutive volumes with the strange things they exhibited. Each afternoon he held his court for an hour or so. He found his interest in his contemporaries becoming personal and intimate. At first he had been alert chiefly for unfamiliarity and peculiarity. Any foppishness in their dress, any discordance with his preconceptions of nobility in their status and manners had jarred upon him, and it was remarkable to him how soon that strangeness and the faint hostility that arose from it disappeared. How soon he came to appreciate the true perspective of his position, and see the old Victorian days remote and quaint. He found himself particularly amused by the red-haired daughter of the manager of the European piggeries. On the second day after dinner he made the acquaintance of a latter-day dancing girl, and found her an astonishing artist. And after that, more hypnotic wonders. On the third day Lincoln was moved to suggest that the master should repair to a pleasure city, but this Graham declined, nor would he accept the services of the hypnotists in his aeronautical experiments. The link of locality held him to London. He found a delight in topographical identifications that he would have missed abroad. Here, or 100 feet below here, he could say, I used to eat my midday cutlets during my London university days. Underneath here was Waterloo and the tiresome hunt for confusing trains. Often have I stood waiting down there, bag in hand, and stared up into the sky above the forest of signals, little thinking I should walk some day 100 yards in the air. And now in that very sky that was once a grey smoke canopy, I circle in a monoplane. During those 3 days Graham was so occupied with these distractions that the vast political movements in progress outside his quarters had but a small share of his attention. Those about him told him little. Daily came Ostrog, the boss, his Grand Vizier, his mayor of the palace, to report in vague terms the steady establishment of his rule. A little trouble soon to be settled in this city, a slight disturbance in that. The song of the social revolt came to him no more. He never learned that it had been forbidden in the municipal limits, and all the great emotions of the crow's nest slumbered in his mind. But on the second and third of the 3 days he found himself, in spite of his interest in the daughter of the pig manager, or it may be by reason of the thoughts her conversation suggested, remembering the girl, Helen Wotton, who had spoken to him so oddly at the Wind Vane Keeper's gathering. The impression she had made was a deep one, albeit the incessant surprise of novel circumstances had kept him from brooding upon it for a space. But now her memory was coming to its own. He wondered what she had meant by those broken, half-forgotten sentences. The picture of her eyes and the earnest passion of her face became more vivid as his mechanical interests faded, Her slender beauty came compellingly between him and certain immediate temptations of ignoble passion. But he did not see her again until 3 full days were past. Chapter 18. Graham Remembers. She came upon him at last in a little gallery that ran from the Windvane offices toward his state apartments. The gallery was long and narrow, with a series of recesses, each with an arched fenestration that looked upon a court of palms. He came upon her suddenly in one of these recesses. She was seated. She turned her head at the sound of his footsteps and started at the sight of him. Every touch of colour vanished from her face. She rose instantly, made a step toward him as if to address him, and hesitated. He stopped and stood still, expectant. Then he perceived that a nervous tumult silenced her, perceived too that she must have sought speech with him to be waiting for him in this place. He felt a regal impulse to assist her. "I have wanted to see you," he said. "A few days ago you wanted to tell me something. You wanted to tell me of the people. What was it you had to tell me?" She looked at him with troubled eyes. "You said the people were unhappy?" For a moment she was silent still. "It must have seemed strange to you," she said abruptly. "It did, and yet it was an impulse." "Well, that is all." She looked at him with a face of hesitation. She spoke with an effort. "You forget," she said, drawing a deep breath. "What? The people? Do you mean you forget the people?" He looked interrogative. "Yes, I know you are surprised, for you do not understand what you are. You do not know the things that are happening." "Well, you do not understand. Not clearly, perhaps, but tell me." She turned to him with sudden resolution. "It is so hard to explain. I have meant to, I have wanted to, and now I cannot. I am not ready with words. But about you, there is something. It is a wonder. Your sleep, your awakening, these things are miracles. To me at least, and to all the common people. You who lived and suffered and died, you who were a common citizen, wake again, live again, to find yourself master almost of the earth." "Master of the earth," he said, "so they tell me. But try and imagine how little I know of it. Cities, trusts, the Labour Department, principalities, powers, dominions, the power and the glory. Yes, I have heard them shout. I know, I am master, king if you wish, with Ostrog, the boss." He paused. She turned upon him and surveyed his face with a curious scrutiny. "Well," he smiled, "to take the responsibility. That is what we have begun to fear." For a moment she said no more. "No," she said slowly. "You will take the responsibility. You will take the responsibility. The people look to you." She spoke softly. "Listen, for at least half the years of your sleep, in every generation, multitudes of people, in every generation greater multitudes of people, have prayed that you might awake. Prayed." Graham moved to speak and did not. She hesitated, and a faint colour crept back to her cheek. "Do you know that you have been to myriads? King Arthur, Barbarossa, the king who would come in his own good time and put the world right for them. I suppose the imagination of the people. Have you not heard our proverb? When the sleeper wakes. While you lay insensible and motionless there, thousands came. Thousands. Every first of the month you lay in state with a white robe upon you, and the people filed by you. When I was a little girl I saw you like that, with your face white and calm." She turned her face from him and looked steadfastly at the painted wall before her. Her voice fell. "When I was a little girl I used to look at your face. It seemed to me fixed and waiting, like the patience of God. That is what we thought of you," she said. That is how you seemed to us." She turned shining eyes to him. Her voice was clear and strong. "In the city, in the earth, a myriad men and women are waiting to see what you will do, full of strange, incredible expectations. Yes, Ostrog, no one, can take that responsibility." And with that, we come to the end of the episode. So I will say thank you very much for joining us today. I hope you all have a wonderful morning, evening, afternoon, or night. No matter what time of day it is, I hope you all have a wonderful one of it. And as always, we will be back tomorrow for more of The Longing. Goodbye.